let's please turn off or silence our cell phones. Before we start, I've asked someone to open up in prayer.
My name is Brian, and I'm an addict. Third step prayer. God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help to thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always.
Thank you. Smoking and vaping are allowed outside only. Bathrooms are located in the church. 21 Pathways is a faith over doubt based fellowship to help people navigate life's challenges, addictions, and struggles. 21 Pathways is community, and we do it together. The number 21 symbolizes two distinct paths converging into one. One path represents those in recovery, seeking spiritual guidance, and the other path is for those seeking to be equipped with the different successful steps we took in our recovery. Together, these paths will unite into one true pathway that leads to eternal salvation, healing, and redemption, the path to kingdom. Psalms 32:8. The Lord says, I will guide you along the best pathway for your life. I will advise you and watch over you. Our motto is, come as you are, leave changed. I've asked some volunteers to read the 12 Laws of Recovery, the Temptation from the Book of Matthew, and the 21 Pathways translation of the Beatitudes.
Hi, I'm Mia Sanders, and this is the 12 Laws of Life Recovery. 1. Powerlessness will result in strength. 2. Humility will result in honor. 3. Connection will result in love. 4. Willingness will result in growth. 5. Sacrifice will result in fulfillment. 6. Faith will result in hope. 7. Surrender will result in victory. 8. Service will result in reward. 9. Forgiveness will result in freedom. 10. Confessions will result in healing. 11. Restitution will result in closure. And 12. Responsibility will result in security.
My name is Quentin Canales, and I'm an addict, and today I'm going to read Matthew 4, the temptation of Jesus. Then Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. After fasting for 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. The tempter came to him and said, If you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become bread. Jesus answered, It is written, Man shall not live on bread alone, but every word that comes from the mouth of God. Then the devil took him to the holy city and had him stand on the highest point of the temple. If you are the Son of God, he said, throw yourself down, for this is written. He will command his angels concerning you, and they will lift you up in their hands so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. Jesus answered, It is also written, Do not put the Lord your God to the test. Again, the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world in their splendor. All of this I will give you, he said, if you bow down and worship me. Jesus said to him, Away from me, Satan, for it is written, Worship the Lord your God and serve him only. Then the devil left him, and the angels came and attended him.
Hi, I'm Rick Rock, and this is the 21 Pathways translation of the Beatitudes. Now, when the greatest teacher of all time saw the crowds, he went up to the mountainside and sat down. His students came to him, and he began to teach them. He said, Blessed are the underdogs, for they will have an unbelievable comeback story. Blessed are those who are sad, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, the gentle, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are those who forgive, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will be examples of goodness. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are hated on for doing the right thing, for they will thrive. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of your beliefs. Therefore rejoice, stand tall, because faithfulness is the reward.
This is an open meeting at 21 Pathways. All crowds are welcome. In keeping up with our purpose, passion, and gratitude, we ask all who participate to confine their discussion to 3 to 4 minutes or less on the topic or scripture at hand. Brian will be running the clock. At 21, we recognize how every number has a name, every name has a story, and every story matters to God.
Thanks, Scott. So if you're joining us live on our YouTube or our Facebook page, if you are struggling, if you're looking for recovery here in California, check out Touchstone. Their contact information is right there. They're going to assess you, find out your recovery needs, and get you the help that you need. If we haven't met yet, my name is Brian Tagan, and I am a recovery and heroin addict. Hello, everyone.
I'm Brian Tagan.
This is my good buddy, Jared. Let's give it up for Jared, yeah? That's right. Next week, we have a good friend of mine. His name's Dean Hargrove. He's going to be sharing. He's going to come down. He's been clean off of heroin for 6 years. Did I say that right? 2016, 20, no, I'm sorry, 8 years. He spent a lot of time in prison for robbing banks because that's where his addiction took him. So he'll be here next week. We're going to try to also get some type of pizza or something also. So if you guys can make it, that would be really, really rad. Let's get started here. Are there any announcements, Kristen? Are we good? Yep, that's it. All right, so we are going to we're going to dive back. I know we go back and forth between Genesis and Exodus. You know, my ADD, obviously, you can figure that one out. We're going to jump back into the book of Genesis. Genesis is the very first book of the Bible. We learned in Genesis about the account of creation. Chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the key word here is created. When we break down the word created, it results in the word artist. Therefore, God is an artist. So moments later in verse 29, we see that God said, "Let us make man in our image." And we break down this verse, we come to the conclusion that God is in all of us. You know, make man in our image. And if God is in all of us, and if God is an artist, then we too are an artist. And we prove that during our recovery when we learned that sometimes, and my buddy Jared here taught me this, sometimes in order to fix ourselves, we have to take ourselves apart piece by piece, only to put ourselves back together again, piece by piece. And I think you would agree with me, Jared would agree with me, that when we do that, that would make one beautiful mosaic, right?
It does.
We say this all the time in here. Scott mentioned it. Every number has a name, every name has a story, and every story matters to God. I think you can find the creativity that all of us have in every one of our unique stories. That beautiful story that we created to get here tonight would define, the artist in us. Which I would say, right? I would say recovery. The stories of recovery are probably the most beautiful stories, right? I think you would agree with me. Some of the most beautiful stories I've come across. So, having said that, the beautiful story that we're going to be discussing tonight is the story of Joseph. In Genesis, there's a bunch of relationships. We went over Cain and Abel. We're going to go over Joseph tonight, the story of Joseph, and then we're going to follow up with the themes of Joseph and how they relate to our recovery. And then we're going to spend the remaining time with my pal Jared here and his story, his testimony, his creative, his art, his masterpiece here. All right, so we kind of journeyed off on this slideshow. We kind of used a little bit of AI, so it was a little bit of fun. So I hope you guys see the humor in it. So we'll begin. Once upon a time, there lived a man by the name of Jacob. Right there he is. It's like a Mel Gibson look, right? Jacob. And Jacob had multiple wives. His two favorites were Rachel and Leah. There you go, right there. And together, they had 12 sons. Of the 12 sons, Joseph, our main character, he was the 11th born, meaning he was one of the youngest. Look at that guy. Stud. Handsome young man, right? Okay, of all the 12 sons, Joseph right here, he was his father's, Jacob, he was the favorite. And why was he the favorite? Well, Joseph was able to cast vision. He was able to interpret dreams. And because of this ability, Joseph was a favorite amongst the crowds. Because of his amazing talent, his father gave him this amazing, there it is, this amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, which I'm sure all of us have a nephew or a niece, that's been in that play, right? Yeah, if you know what I'm talking about, it came from the Bible. Let's see here. Where am I at here? I get caught up in that jacket. And because of all this, Joseph's brothers knew that their father loved Joseph more than all of them, right? He was the favorite. They were not happy about it, and he was definitely the favorite and made everyone really, really jealous. So one day, Jacob, the father, asked Joseph to go check on his brothers who were taking care of the sheep in a distant field. So Joseph, he traveled to where his brothers were supposed to be. He couldn't find them. And then this guy told him, hey, your brothers are over here in this area. He goes over to that area. He finds them. And while the brothers saw Joseph approaching, while he saw him coming up, this is where they decided that they're going to plot against their brother that they're jealous of. And they're going to have this plot where they're going to kill him, right? They're going to cut him up, and they're going to throw him in a pit. And they're going to tell their father, Jacob, that he was eaten by some animals. So, as Joseph approached his brothers, he began a conversation with them, and out of the distance, they saw a group of merchants coming towards them. The merchants were carrying spices, other goods, and they were headed down to Egypt. And so Judah, one of Joseph's brothers, one of the 12, he had this idea. He said, you know what we should do? We should sell Joseph to the merchants, and that way we don't have to kill him. He'll be gone. And the brothers, they said, that's what we're going to do. That's the plan, right? So they took off Joseph's amazing Technicolor jacket, and they threw him in this empty pit, and they sat down, and they started to grow their hummus and their lamb chops. And while they were eating, they saw the merchants approaching. And so the brothers went, and they got Joseph out of the pit. They pulled him out, and then they sold Joseph to the merchants for, 20 shekels of silver. So the merchants, they take Joseph, and they take him down to Egypt. And so later, the brothers, they take, Joseph's multicolored coat, they dip it in some goat's blood, and then they take the coat back to their father. Jacob, the father, recognized the coat had become, he was convinced that, his favorite son was attacked and eaten by, wolves or animals. He was pretty sad about it. Meanwhile, Joseph is on his way to Egypt to be a slave, right? He's sold to the merchants. So the merchants, they ended up selling Joseph to this guy named Potiphar. And Potiphar was Pharaoh over in Egypt. He was like the right-hand man kind of guy. He was like one of the top-notch. He was a general, one of Pharaoh's top guys. And where am I at here? This happens every time. So Potiphar takes him, and Joseph, he becomes like he's doing great. He's working for Potiphar. Everyone in the house loves him. But now the wife of Potiphar is like, she wants to hook up with this guy. And she is like all about it. And he's like, no, not going to dip the pen in the company ink. And he says, not going to happen. And she gets a little hurt by it. So what does she do? She goes and tells Potiphar that Joseph tried to hook up with her, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, Joseph ends up in jail, right? So he ends up in jail, and while he's in prison, he comes across these two dudes, the cupbearer and the baker, right? So he comes across these guys, and remember, Joseph is known for being able to interpret dreams. He knows how to cast vision. And so he comes across these two guys, and he starts to interpret their dreams. And he tells the cupbearer that, he's going to be freed, and he tells the baker, about his execution. So, again, long story short, the cupbearer, he was Pharaoh's guy. So he ends up going back to Pharaoh, and while he's back with Pharaoh, things start to happen, and Pharaoh starts to have these crazy dreams. He starts to have these dreams like, he's unsure what they mean. And the cupbearer says, hey, Pharaoh, there's a dude in prison. His name's Joseph. He knows how to interpret these dreams. We need to go get him. So he goes over and he pulls out Joseph out of prison, takes him over to Pharaoh, and they have a little chit chat. And Pharaoh says, "These are my dreams. What does this mean?" And Joseph tells him, he says, "Okay, we're going to go in drought in about 7 years. What we need to start doing is we need to stockpile all kinds of, grain, and we need to make sure that, we're able to take care of ourselves after this drought, after famine, and we're gonna need it because, we're gonna starve or we're gonna die." And Pharaoh listened to him, and he set up Pharaoh for a dub, right? He set him up, made him look like a G, and he's got him dialed in. Pharaoh trusts him, and sure enough, what happens is, famine hits, and they are in drought. But guess what? Egypt is dialed in. They got all this stock of grain. They're able to survive, and Pharaoh now looks like the almighty king that he is in Egypt. And Joseph, he's now like this, he's like leader of the pack. He's gone to the top. He's gone from, being thrown in a pit to being a slave to being thrown in jail. Then obviously he's accused by Potiphar's wife, and now he's interpreting dreams for Pharaoh, and he is setting up Egypt for a win. So, what happens next? The brothers are now, they're starving, right? Because all the villages around Egypt, now they're coming to Egypt because they know Egypt has tons of food. So they come straight over to Egypt, and the 11 brothers that plotted on Joseph to have him sold to the merchants, they come looking for food. And so when they come looking for food, Joseph, he sees them walking up, he sees them, and what does he do, right? He has two options. We can either we can open up the door of forgiveness, or we can open up the door of resentment. And Joseph, being he's a man of God, and mind you, this whole time, right, he has not lost his faith. He has just, he's all about it. He knew God would deliver. He never lost his faith in all of the betrayal, prison. And now that he sees his brothers, he chooses forgiveness. And what ends up happening is they end up going back, grabbing their father, Jacob, and they live happily ever after. So what does this have to do with, recovery? What does this story have to do with recovery? So we came up with about 8 themes. And the first one we came up with was betrayal and rejection. So Joseph was betrayed and rejected by his brothers who sold him into slavery. So how many of us, right, have cheated on our loved ones with alcohol and drugs? I know I have, right? I chose alcohol and drugs over my family. And, it's you look back at it, right? But that's why we're here. Do we have feelings of abandonment, or have we abandoned others? Absolutely, right? Have we hurt? Maybe there was children involved, family, friends. So the betrayal, the rejection can lead to feelings of shame, guilt, unworthiness, and ultimately, I know for me, when I felt that shame and that guilt, it caused, instead of dealing with it, what did I do? I just numbed myself out. I didn't want to deal with it. It's easier just to numb ourselves out than have to deal with it.
I don't want any part of it.
Right? Second theme, loss and grief. So Joseph lost his family, he lost his freedom, he lost his home, and he was forced to live in a foreign land. So when I think of loss and grief of Joseph, I think of Joseph in the bottom of that pit, right? Bottom of that pit. And to me, it's symbolic of rock bottom, right? Like, how many of us have been in the bottom of the pit, right? How many of us have been in the bottom of the pit? How many of us were homeless? How many of us at one point were, locked up in jail? How many of us were kicked out of our homes because of our addictions? The loss and grief can lead to feelings of anger, depression, hopelessness, which in most cases cause not just harm to ourselves, but harm to others, right? Harm to all those that love us. Third theme, faithfulness in suffering. Despite his difficult circumstances, Joseph always remained faithful to God and chose to trust that God was always in control. We say it all the time. We kind of went over this in the book of James. It's a major theme here at 21, so if you're new, pay attention to this. We say it all the time. It's not a challenge, it's not a trial, it's not a punishment, but rather it's an opportunity. You have to change your perspective. The opportunity here is to show how we trust God and how we remain faithful to God's plan for us. This faithfulness in the midst of suffering is a key because we learn to trust God's goodness and care even when things are hard. So the faithfulness can lead to hope, peace, and more importantly, perseverance, right? So the faith in God, just like we learned in the book of James, the opportunity is the perseverance and having God walk with us and show us perseverance. How do we endure? The fourth theme, the rise to power. Through his faithfulness, Joseph rose to great power and influence in Egypt, second only to Pharaoh. When we remain faithful, we experience strength and hope. When we talk about it, and we talk about it all the time here, how God in our journey, how he drops these breadcrumbs of excitement right there in front of us. And all we have to do is have the courage just to pick them up. And when we do have that courage, doors begin to open, bridges are built, and these amazing, amazing opportunities, they begin to unfold right before us. In Joseph's story, it's a perfect example of how God can take our brokenness and use it for good, and how he can use it to bless others even in our pain. So this rise to power can lead to a sense of purpose, fulfillment, and joy. Not happiness, right? Joy. For those of you that remember the difference between happiness and joy. The fifth theme, forgiveness and reconciliation. When his brothers came to Egypt seeking food, Joseph had to decide whether to forgive them or offer them life, or to seek revenge and destroy them, right? He had two doors, the door of forgiveness or the door of resentment. His choice to forgive and show mercy offers a powerful picture of the forgiveness and reconciliation that is possible only through God's power. So by forgiving not just others, but ourselves, leads to healing, redemption, peace, and self-control. We say it all the time. Blessed are those who have a thirst and hunger for righteousness. And the next beatitude right after that is, blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. So in here we believe that to have a thirst and hunger for righteousness is shown through a life of forgiveness. To translate a thirst and hunger for righteousness would be like have self-control. In order to have self-control, is shown through a life of forgiveness. If I have forgiveness, I have self-control. If I have self-control, I have a chance. So this is how God wants you to bring restoration and redemption in our lives. It leads to joy, hope, and a new life, if you want it. Number 7, God's sovereignty, always in control. Throughout his story, Joseph recognized God's sovereignty and his faithfulness, even in his suffering. We saw that God had been at work all along, even in his hurt, his betrayal, and this was to bring about the good. So by recognizing that God is always in control is a key part of our recovery. It's a key part of our recovery journey. It helps us build trust within ourselves, others to trust us. It provides peace and hope because it's all part of God's beautiful plan for us, right? Sometimes we have to be completely broken. We have to let God break us down to the bare little pieces, right? Just so we can figure out how to lean on God. Trust him and allow him to rebuild us. The last theme here, hope and healing. So Joseph's story offers hope and healing to all who are broken and seeking restoration. It shows that God can take even the most broken family, which we're all part of, right? I mean, we're a family in here, and we all come from broken pieces. And he can take those broken pieces, and he can begin to heal. It shows that God can take even the most broken family and use them for his glory. So, life is hard. Unfortunately, that's just how the world works, right? Nothing is easy. everyone in here, right? We've all messed up more than once, but there's always hope in every single one of us, in every one of our artistic, creative stories. And you know, when we started this whole shebanger, 21 Pathways, you know, a lot of us got together and we started to share our stories and how we started to see how creative all of them were, because they ultimately led us all to one another, right? They led us to whatever room we met in. They led us to each other's dinner tables. They led us into each other's lives. And, you know, the opportunity right now to let Jared share his testimony, his creative story, and how his mapping and my mapping and how it all came to be. It's definitely something I'm really, really proud of. So I appreciate you being here, and I am gonna hand you the keys, my friend.
Thank you, Brian.
Yes. Start the time. Start the timer. Cue's on the timer tonight.
We're going to go over.
I think we go ahead. Introduce yourself.
My name's Jared. I'm a struggling heroin addict and an addict of many other things.
What's up, Jared?
Thank you.
I think we should
Brian.
start with, can we start? We talked about how, let's get right into that bathroom at my time.
Can I just thank Brian for this opportunity first, and what an amazing job God has done in making this mosaic over here.
That's what I'm talking about. I love you, man. Thank you.
I love
Thank
you.
you.
Me and Brian have been through it since day one.
We've been through it since day one. Yeah, let's jump right into that bathroom, man.
So the bathroom he's talking about is January 17th, 2022. It was the day I finally decided to make my way to My Time Recovery. I put a few barriers in front of me before getting down there, but it was the last hour road trip in which I was staying at my grandma's. I was supposed to drive down to My Time Recovery, check in. I think it was with Sandra, and my mom wouldn't let me drive. So we're driving down there, you know. There's a part in the big book that says 1,000 is never enough, or 1 is never enough, 1,000 is too many, whichever way it is. But in my head, I'm like, I need to get high. I need to get high one last time. Here I am, I need to get high one last time. That's all. That's all.
Just one last time.
So we're walking up. We walk up the stairs of My Time Recovery, if you've ever walked in the front doors. I walked up to the stairs. On the left is the administration door. On the right is a bathroom. I don't say a word to my mother, and I walk straight into the bathroom, because this is my last chance. I walk into the bathroom. I pull out my little baggie, my thing of foil, my tutor, and the next thing I know, I'm sitting on a stretcher. I had overdosed in the bathroom. My mom waiting patiently outside of the bathroom.
Fentanyl, yeah? Was it fentanyl?
It was fentanyl. Only a tiny bit, you know. I was shaking so bad, a little bit extra came out on the foil. But my mom was sitting out there waiting for me, and I wasn't coming out. And she came in screaming, hollering for everybody in My Time to come get me, because I was gone. They came in, they Narcaned me in both nostrils. And when I woke up, I was sitting there on the hospital, not the hospital gurney, but the ambulance gurney.
Let me ask you a quick question. It was fentanyl, but I know you're a heroin addict. Had you gotten into fentanyl like weeks before, months before? How much fentanyl had been in your system?
It was about a year prior.
Okay.
I lost my heroin in a golf course bathroom, and then I came back on the 9th hole and it was gone. And the dealer was out of town, so you know, on to the next.
So you overdose in My Time. You find yourself on a stretcher. Your poor mother.
Absolutely.
What did your mom say about that situation?
I had a chance to talk to her before I left, and it was just tears of fear, but it was also tears of relief that here I am, here is my opportunity to get my life back in order.
So okay, so we're at my time. Let's go back 12 years earlier to when you graduate college and you are living with your 4 buddies down in Hermosa. Let's give everyone that experience leading up to my time.
That's 12 years prior. Yeah, I managed to graduate college. You know, big accomplishment. You know, that was the big thing that I had to do in life, and I had made it. You know, I got a big boy job. I was living, as Brian likes to call us, the 4 dickheads.
They were.
A good buddy, and we're all doing the same thing. We're all smoking Oxycontin, doing heroin, whatever it takes. You know, we're the life of the party. We're in Newport Beach, Huntington Beach, Hermosa. You know, that's.
Was that? Can you go back a picture, Christian, real quick? Was that Gavin, the guy with the Pirates hat on?
No,
Okay.
that's good old James Nino. At one
Say he
point,
put on some weight, but that's all right.
my dealer.
Got it. Okay, so you are. Is this now in college? Is this where you were introduced to Oxy?
Just out of high school, yeah.
Okay.
City college years, introduced to Oxy. You know.
Did you get through college on pills, drugs?
No. Well, I spent some time in City College doing plenty of partying. You know, I did the move away. I moved down south to Long Beach, and it was like kind of a new lease on life. And I found a fraternity, so I did a lot of drinking, a lot of cocaine. You know, as kind of the norm, and surrounded myself with good people.
Yeah.
I would
So,
say.
Kristen, go back to that picture real quick. Our buddy Gavin right here. So was this the first person in your group of friends that you lost to an overdose?
I lost him to a car crash, and I believe it was in the process.
Okay,
of,
yeah, I was under the impression he was.
Of that kind of thing. No.
Okay, so there was prior.
It was prior. There was kids in high school.
Because I remember when that happened, and yeah, that was probably one of the. I think there was at that point in my life there had been a couple.
And that was one of those moments in my life where, you know, I thought that, you know, something grief, loss like that would, you know, keep me from the path that I was on.
So you are in college, you graduate, you're partying, you're working, and are you a functioning addict at this point? Are you doing drugs to as soon as you wake up?
I've got a big boy job. I wake up in the morning, I put on a suit and tie, I go into the office, you know, barely making it in, barely make it through the morning meeting. And the first thing I do is leave that office, drive an hour in the opposite direction in which I'm supposed to head for my dope. And then it's game on, you know. I'm a racket. You know, I was in sales, so, you know, I take one of those, and you can't get me to shut up, if you can believe that. and there was days where, you know, I'm showing up to a business meeting, you know, trying to close the deal, and I'm out in the parking lot puking my brains out before I walk in. A little mouthwash, cologne, good to go.
So you're waking up, you're going to a meeting, and then it's that chaos starts, right? Where am I going to get it? How am I going to get it? Who's got it? And you would drive up to an hour away. Daily.
It wasn't a question.
Yeah.
There was no up to it.
And then it just becomes now we're just dependent upon it, right? Because we see success too, right? Because, you know, the money's coming in, and everybody loves Jared, the salesman, because, you know, you're on some Oxycontin.
Happy,
yeah,
go
you can sell
lucky,
anything.
put on the face of total bliss.
Right.
With a heart that's dying inside.
So you are, at what point did you realize, okay, it's getting out of control? You know, you have a talk with your boss. Your boss informs you that he doesn't want you working there anymore. and explain that, and then what happens next after that.
So the month prior to me getting fired, I was the top rep in the company, and I was like, oh, I'm going to take this time that they give me away from the office, in which I'm supposed to be closing deals on my own, but I'm going to take it to, correct my behavior. I spent 2 weeks, and it didn't work, and I kind of came off, and then I just couldn't be myself, so I continued again. And when I turned in 0 deals that month, they decided to let me go.
Do you think they knew
Oh, they knew.
how bad everything was?
They knew.
Yeah.
You can hide it for so long, but there's always signs.
Were you the guy that would go into the bathroom and leave the faucet sink on?
I didn't have to do that.
Okay.
But
That was the OxyContin phase that I was going through.
oh no, this was
You knew I had Oxy when the faucet sink was on for like an hour, crushing it up. So then you eventually leave LA, and you end up going to Tahoe.
Tahoe. It's gonna save me. Growing up, my favorite thing to do is go skiing and snowboarding. South Lake Tahoe, get a season pass. I've got a cabin rented for 3 months with the money that unemployment's given me. I'm set to go. I'm gonna move to Tahoe. I'm gonna get sober. I'm gonna study for the GMAT, which is a master's program, and life's gonna be okay. And all I need is 3 months in Tahoe by myself to do it.
And is this where the cycle started, where you drive to Fresno, grab your dope, and then go to Tahoe, try to sober up, and then back and forth, that whole cycle?
Back and forth.
Back and forth.
Back and forth. Make it a week. I would not sleep, and then I'd try to go snowboarding at 4 a.m., withdrawing.
Yeah.
Make it through that day. Maybe I could sleep. And then a few days later, I was headed back to Fresno at 110 miles an hour.
Yeah, and the cycle is just vicious, right? Every few days, we're back in Fresno buying dope, back in Tahoe, trying to sober up, back in Fresno getting the dope.
It's nonstop.
It's nonstop.
I can't stop.
Looking back at it and being able to reflect now, how miserable, how hard was that part of your life? Like, explain to everyone how difficult that is to live.
It's fun when you're high. That part's okay. It's the going back to Tahoe and going, how the hell did I end up here again?
Yeah. Now, when you finally realize it had been enough, you end up moving back to Fresno and explain to everyone how the addiction has turned into a full disease at this point.
I managed to get a girlfriend in Fresno while I was living in Tahoe. My 3-month lease was up. That wasn't working, so let's try Fresno. And it was a safe place for me to get high. I started by hanging out in Dad's house and drinking his beers and relaxing in his pool for a while until that didn't work. I
Right.
got kicked out of the house, moved on, get a job. I went from corporate sales to selling steaks out of a meat van, which is a really good gig for getting high.
Yeah, because you're getting gas money and you're
Yeah.
taking that gas money to go buy dope.
All the potential in the world. I've got a degree and I'm selling meat out of a van.
Yeah.
And life's beautiful.
And so this happens and it continues. The cycle goes from Tahoe, we see the cycle, and then now we're back in Fresno and we're just doing the same thing. You're a full-on junkie at this point, dependent on heroin, and something happens where you decide to go check into a place in San Clemente, right? The
Yeah.
rehab?
Well, at that point I had exhausted all my resources that that I knew of getting sober. Vivitrol shot, go to the beach house, withdraw for a minute, tell your girlfriend and she'll self-detox you. All the things to do it on my own, and I couldn't, so I finally broke down and agreed to go to treatment down south.
So you go down to San Clemente, you go into rehab, and you were there for, how long were you there for?
I stayed in treatment for 18 months. At that time, I had a relapse after a month, a relapse after 9 months, and a relapse after the next 9 months. And then they finally said, well, there's really nothing we can do for you. You know how to stay sober.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think you kept relapsing after a year? Were you working a program? Did you have a sponsor? Were you working any steps? Were you just going through the motion?
I was going through the motion. I was the meeting man. You know, I could go to meetings. I built a little community, doing some fun stuff, sober stuff. But I wasn't convinced that I was one of you, that I was, you know, the person they're talking about in the room.
Right.
You know, that's not me. I graduated college. I had a great job.
Yeah.
I had all these things. Like, that's not me. I wasn't robbing banks.
Yeah. So. Imagine that. Jared thinking he's better than all of us. You know? Jeez. So you end up, I love you, man. And so you end up, okay, you get out of San Clemente, you end up in, you're back in Fresno at this point. This is 2018 to 2021. You're a contractor, right? This is when you get your contracting license?
Yes,
Envision?
I had not come back. I was still down south.
Okay, you're still down south?
I was still down south. I got my contractor's license, but I had dabbled again.
Yeah.
And, you know, the stressors of life, injury, whatever it was, you know, what was every 9 months became every month to every other week to every week to
every morning.
To every morning.
So you're back on it.
I
Head on.
I am gone.
All that time in San Clemente, all that sun, all that surf, right? And now you're back. But now you're a functioning addict. You're doing your contracting, which ultimately, you know, this led us back to My Time, right? And then before you know it, we are with Mom on our way to My Time. You're going to check yourself in. You got dope in your pocket, and you know you're going to get loaded one last time. You go into My Time with your mom. You tell her you're going to go to the bathroom, and
I didn't tell her. I just went.
you just went in, and then
I wasn't going to let her stop me.
you weren't going to let her. Yeah, because she knew. Yeah, okay. And then so you go into the bathroom, and before you know it, you're on a stretcher, and you get out of that. Now you are into My Time. Let's talk about My Time. So now it is. What do we say? It's 2021 at this point. No, I'm sorry. It's 2022, correct?
Yes, correct.
222, and you are in My Time. And let's talk about your time at My Time. What was that like?
Well, real quick, when I sat back down before they released me to My Time, the ambulance, they kept looking at me going, "Are you safe here? Are you safe here?" And I was looking at this guy, Peter, across the room, and in my head, I'm like, "No, I don't know. I think they're tricking me. I think they're tricking me."
Yeah.
I don't know if that was the effects of the Narcan or not. But I will say this. After the conversation that I had with my mom, and the moment I walked into the detox house, I knew I'd made it. I knew this was the place. I had gotten sober before. I thoroughly enjoyed the sober life that I was able to create, and I knew I was there. And it was time. It was time to go to work, and it was a safe place to do that.
And let's talk about that safe place. So you walk into My Time, you end up getting a counselor, you end up meeting some amazing friends. What is your relationship with God at this point?
At this point, my relationship with God, He got me there. I know I'm disconnected from Him, and I know that I have to build that relationship back if I'm going to stay sober.
Were you willing to do it?
And I was absolutely willing to do that.
So you get to My Time, you start to realize that you're going to start working with God rather than work against God, and you start to, I remember the first time all of us kind of really met was over at HA, over at the Red Church. Tell us about that meeting and how how it changed your life.
HA.
That you're still a huge part of today. That's your
I
home
am
group.
I am a huge part of it. I have a lot of family from that meeting. I met Brian in that meeting. I met Tony in that meeting. Me and Quentin went to that meeting together. We were bunkies, so
Yeah.
you know, we kind of did everything with each other at that point. I don't know if that's for the best, but we were there.
What,
and
what-
that meeting saved my
What
life.
sober house were you guys at?
That was, well, we ran the Nest.
Right.
Do we do Nest shout outs here?
Yeah, why not? So you guys are at the Nest, you're going to HA, but more importantly, you're learning about the power of community. Talk to us about how community has had a huge part of your recovery.
Community keeps me together. Most recently, I've had some struggles, and over the past few days, the amount of outreach in which I've received and comfort is like it. I didn't know I had that, you know, but building a community here for recovery is amazing. And you talk about it all the time. You know, you have to have some kind of community, and I have to stay connected with people, especially in a hometown where, you know, I can stray and go hang out with old friends, do that kind of thing, but I chose to build a community when I came here that was outside of old people I knew.
And it started with your time at My Time, and it started with your time at the Nest, and it started over at HA. You know, one of the things that I learned that had a huge part of my recovery was that's when I was at HA is when I started to see God working into people. And we talked about earlier about how, you know, God is this amazing artist, and the creation, and how if you know, created man in his image, then all of us too are an artist. And I started to see how people like yourself and some of the people that you just mentioned, how God was working these great things in other people's lives. Talk about some of the things that you witnessed in HA and how it's had a huge impact in your life today.
That's a tough one because I've seen growth in people. I have friendships with people where I've seen all that growth. I have people in my community that have helped me grow. And all at the same time, you know, I've seen a lot of people fail from that. And that's the tough one.
Yeah, let's talk about how hard it is. We've seen, I mean, in our time together, we've seen 12 people pass away in our first 2 years of recovery. How hard was that?
It was numbing to the point where you're almost expecting it.
Right.
You know that you're like, at this point, it's when's it gonna happen again? Who's next?
Who's next? And then we've been able to have some conversations, some cool conversations recently about how blessed are we that we're able to be part of a community now where we see more people getting 1-year chips. You know, we're seeing more people get 9-month chips, 1-year chips, 18-month chips than we are, you know, passing. It's pretty cool.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't want to necessarily take credit, but between a few of us, me, you, Quentin, I remember conversations of like, we have to be the ones that stick around.
Yeah.
You know, to be there for people, and in the process, we opened up a second HA meeting. You've obviously
We've created 21 Pathways.
You've obviously created a space.
We've created we've done some pretty cool things, water drives, softball tournaments. Yeah, absolutely.
And it's just to get people to join the community.
Absolutely. And we say it all the time in here, right? How community results in that agape love, and how service is the bridge of that agape love. And for those of you that are not, you know, agape love is one of our big themes here. It's that unconditional love where we want that sacrificial love where we want nothing in return. Like Jared does so much service work where he's not He's not getting paid for it. He's not looking for a pat on the back. He's doing it because that's what he wants to do. He wants to give back, which is really cool. Okay, so we're at my time. Then something crazy happens, right? You're 6 months into your sobriety, and I remember we were all at Primary Purpose. Jill Wilson's, shout out to Jill, over at her meeting, and I remember you got up and you got a newcomership, and I was like, what is this guy doing? Like, why is he getting a newcomership? Explain to everybody what happened.
I was in a bar. I ordered a glass of milk, and they handed me whiskey. No, I was back down south. I had to clear up some business that I had down there, which happened to be in the vicinity of where I would typically pick up dope. And, everything seems to be going all right for Jared. I've got community, I've got friends, I've got a sponsor. We've worked a few steps at this point. But the temptation was there. And, I just didn't pick up the phone, And actually, I did pick up the phone. I called Quentin. I wasn't going to tell him that I was going to get high, but I just wanted to call and say hi before I did.
Yeah. You were hinting at it, in a sense, in your own mind.
Yeah. I was hoping he was going to be like, Jared, are you getting high right now?
Right.
And I could be like, yeah, you're right. I shouldn't be.
So you end up relapsing.
I end up relapsing, and it was a moment in my life in which I've done this before. That's my MO. That's why I'm not one of you. Is I can relapse, for a day maybe, and then pretend everything's okay, and get right back to it. But at this point in my life, I've done that so many times. It's a broken record for me, and it was just kind of one of those life decisions where I had to decide: do I want to keep, doing this, or do I want to break the cycle for myself?
But you had and one thing I've always commended you for is, I remember when Tony talked about it in his story, it was like, but you had the courage, man. You had the courage to confess, and that confession we always say leads to healing. And you came back and tell us about the conversation you had with Q about what you had done and how great it felt just to get it off your chest. And now we can take a step forward and move in the right direction.
I did it all. I called my sponsor. I called Quentin. I told my beautiful girlfriend, Sandra, what I had done. I had told the owner of My Time. I told the sober living guy. That's what I had to do. I had to take accountability.
That's right.
And it's been the best thing I've done.
Absolutely. That's pretty good, right? Because it's important, because we do. Things happen. Shit happens. And we just get back on the horse. We make a phone call. We own up to it. And we move forward, right? It's not the end of the world. It might feel like it. It might feel like it at first. But once we're able to get out in front of it, it's a true blessing. Okay, so then you relapse, and man, what's your sobriety date? Tell everyone what your sobriety date is. August what?
August 18th, 2022.
That's right. So we got 2 years of sobriety. For the remaining time, I want you to share with everyone how beautiful sobriety is, how sobriety's changed your life, and some of the most amazing things that have happened. The breadcrumbs that have dropped out before you that you've had the courage to pick up, and how these amazing relationships have just unfolded before you.
Well, first, on that date, I want to give a shout out to God. It was a God moment. I reached out to him, he responded to me, and he told me exactly what to do. That's how I got there. But the last 2.5 years, I said it the other night, it hasn't been perfect.
Yeah.
I still have my struggles. But the life change that I've experienced over the last 2.5 years, and the ability to grow from staying sober, is what gives me hope. My relationship with God. I know you talk about God as being at the center of all of our relationships quite often. And I'll be honest, the last 6 months I've heard that. It sounded like a bunch of bullshit to me.
Yeah. I know.
And then when we talked about it, I realized, what does God at the center of my relationship look like? When God is at the center of my relationships are wonderful. When I remove God from my relationships, not so great. Not so great for me. So I just wanted to touch on that, and thank you for those words. Community. I mean, we started talking about community. I have a wonderful group of friends. I have a beautiful girlfriend. I have mentors.
You guys just got back from a pretty cool trip, right?
We got back from pig camp. You know, a group of us fellows went camping, took a bunch of guns out there, expecting to see some pigs, and we didn't, but...
It was pretty cold, yeah?
It had nothing to do with it. It was cold. I was freezing in my sleeping bag.
I was nice and warm.
I'm sure you were. You know, and those are some of the experiences. We've hiked to the top of Yosemite. One of my big things is, I mean, we talked about slavery. I know you talk about it. Travel, you know. That's one thing that I could never do when I was in my addiction. There was
Yes.
I couldn't travel, so the ability to do that.
How great does that feel, right? To be able to go on a trip and not have to worry about, you know, what pocket, you know, how am I going to get my drugs? Where am I going to get it? How am I going to get high? How am I going to function today?
Yeah, I mean, I get nervous when cops get behind me, but you know, all at the same time, I'm like eager for them to pull me over just so I could tell them I'm sober.
Yes. Drug test me, please.
I'm doing nothing wrong. But the community of things, my family, we've been on some wonderful family trips, and you know, one of the big things was right before I came in January was Christmas with my family, where I am running around like a psychopath. And my mom's calling me, you know, every 10 minutes, where are you at, where you at, where you at? And, you know, I'm high out of my mind. And just, the you know, simple things like the opportunity to enjoy a family Christmas. We've got Thanksgiving coming up, you know. Those are the things that we achieve. On top of that, you know, I have a business that I am growing here in Fresno. One of the things that I remember from treatment, a counselor had told me, he said, you can do anything you want with your life, as long as you never pick up another drink or a drug. And it's been true, you know, and I've watched other people do it. I've watched other people get jobs. I've watched other people get in relationships. I've watched people hold jobs longer than they've ever had in their life. I've seen people become lawyers, you know, all of these things that we gain in sobriety. Yeah. And to be able to sit up here with Brian Tagan, you know, the guy that walked into HA with Laker shorts on,
broken,
looking bummed out, and sitting up here, just a beautiful mosaic.
That's right. That's right. Let me ask you one question. We're going to close up shop here. So I believe family is everything, right? I'm so blessed to have I'm blessed to have all of you. You have a strong relationship with your mom. I just want to finish off with, what's your relationship with your mom? And, you know, she took you into my time and she watched you come out on a stretcher. I know you've told me a few times that she gives you a 1-year chip. How special is it to you to have your mom's love and to have her support you and to have that relationship back?
Well, like Joseph, I'm the favorite child in the family. So my mom's always given that kind of unconditional love. She's watching right now. But for me to give it back to her and to know that I'm not causing her that harm that I do in my addiction, that's what's fulfilling. She's gonna love me regardless.
Right. But to make sure, yeah, absolutely. Well, I love you. I'm proud of you. I rock with you. Let's give it up for Jared.
Hi, I'm Melissa Murphy, and this is Walking Together. In the story of temptation read earlier, we were given a blueprint for success. How do we bring light out of darkness? There is a solution. Jesus models what it looks like to bring order out of chaos. When he is a test of heart, he responds, "It is written," which is another way of saying it is in the Word. And Jesus has the Word in him. Not only does Jesus know the path, but he walks the path correct. Not only does Jesus know the story of God, he trusts the story of God. And we see him doing that precisely in the story of temptation. What would happen this week if you had a test of heart? Would you know the Word? Would you trust the Word? As we walk together, just as Jesus walked the path, we equip ourselves with the profound wisdom of Scripture. So next time temptation or challenge confronts us, we stand resilient, declaring with conviction, "It is written." Know the Word, trust the Word. Know the story, trust the story. Know the path, walk the path. God has a plan, we just need to trust it. It was written.
Hi, my name is Carol, and I'm reading Titus 3:3-7. At one
Carol.
time, we too were foolish, disobedient, deceived, and enslaved by all kinds of passions and pleasures. We lived in malice and envy, being hated and hating one another. But when the kindness and love of God, our Savior, appeared, he saved us, not because of righteous things we had done, but because of his mercy. He saved us through the washing of rebirth and renewal by the Holy Spirit, whom he poured out on us generously through Christ our Savior, so that having been justified by his grace, we might become heirs, having the hope of eternal life.
Thank you, Carol. Well, I want to thank everyone for making it out tonight. If you're online watching, thank you for tuning in. We're going to be back here again next week, next Tuesday, 6:30 to 7:30. Would you like to lead us out? And what prayer? I'm going to let you pick.
Let's do the Lord's Prayer.